Gentle redirection. I'd like to teach you another exercise which I consider to be one of the most important we're going to do. If you've already learned gentle redirection, I would invite you to use this time to practice it. Gentle redirection is an idea that applies both to how we manage our thinking and how we manage our lives. I'd like to begin by doing an exercise. For 1 minute, I would like you to focus on your breathing. Now, there's a really good chance that during the course of this minute, you'll find your mind has wandered to something else. And if it does, that's okay. But as soon as you realize that your attention has gone to something else, I'd like you to gently bring it back to your breathing. Even if it goes to something else 100 different times, that's okay, as long as each time you recognize that it's gone to something else, you gently bring it back to your breathing. Okay? Ready, go. Okay, so what was that like for you? Some of my clients, as we've done this exercise, have told me that it was calming. Others have told me that it was frustrating for them. Some people tell me that they think that they're good at it. But if you're like most of the people that I work with, you found that you were frequently distracted. Now think about what that means. 60 seconds is not a lot of time. If we can't keep our mind focused for 1 minute when we're being intentional about our thinking, what does that mean for the rest of the day when we're not as intentional about our thinking? Our thinking can end up in all sorts of different places, and many of those places are not good for us. But now I want you to think about how we set ourselves up for that exercise. I said, if your thinking goes to something else, that's okay. In doing so, I was identifying the normal or the typical condition in our society. In our society, it's really common to get distracted. There's so much information that's coming at us. And I also gave us something to do in that situation. Gently bring your focus back. In doing so, we set ourselves up that whether we stayed focused or got distracted, we could be successful. So this reminds me of weightlifting. In weightlifting, there's the idea of the max lift. And in the max lift, you put as much weight on the bar as you can, and you lift the bar 1 time. If you can lift the bar twice, then it wasn't your max lift. So if you're able to keep your thinking on your breathing for an entire minute, that's like doing a max lift. So why do we do a max lift in weight training? Well, because it strengthens the body. As we do the gentle redirection exercise, if you're able to keep your mind on your thinking for an entire minute, it strengthens the mind. But the other idea in weightlifting is repetition. You use a lower amount of weight and you lift the bar repeatedly. Why do we do repetition? Because that also builds strength. So in this exercise, when you gently redirected your mind to your breathing, that was like doing a repetition. So if your mind goes to something else 10 times, you get in 10 repetitions. If something distracts you 100 times, and 100 times you gently bring your thinking back to your breathing, you get in 100 repetitions, and that also strengthens your mind. Now, the gentle is a really important aspect of this. It's important to recognize that we're redirecting without criticizing ourselves, without beating ourselves up. Recognize also that it's the same approach that I recommended when you notice the resistance. So this exercise strengthens the mind. It increases your capacity to keep your mind focused on that which is beneficial to you. But it also literally heals the brain. There's a researcher out of UCLA, his name is Dan Siegel, and he's video recording neurons in the brain making new connections. And what he says is that when somebody comes to outpatient therapy, they are typically dealing with dysregulation that happens in the front of the brain. So anxiety is front of the brain, attention deficit is front of the brain, OCD is front of the brain. And what he's noticing is that when people engage in mindfulness exercises like gentle redirection, it creates new neural connections in the front of the brain. So exercises like this, mindfulness exercises, are literally healing the front of the brain. So this exercise strengthens the mind, it heals the brain, and it also ends up being a really good metaphor for life. Well, what do I mean by that? So, do you know anybody who's ever tried to lose weight? Yeah, lots of people in our country are overweight, and lots of people try to lose weight. Do you know anybody who's ever tried to lose weight and it hasn't worked? Again, you probably do. So think about somebody who's trying to lose weight and they decide that their weight loss strategy is that they're going to stop eating dessert. Every night she eats dessert and she's just going to stop eating dessert. Well, is that a good weight loss strategy? Yeah, if she lowers the amount of calories that she's eating, she should lose weight. Okay, so let's say day 1, she doesn't eat any dessert. Day 2, no dessert. Day 3, no dessert. Day 4, she eats dessert. Day 5, no dessert. Day 6, no dessert. Day 7, she eats dessert again. Is it possible that on day 7 she's going to feel bad about herself? Yeah. But the reality is she's gone from eating dessert 7 out of 7 days to only 2 out of 7 days, which is a huge amount of progress. So if she were to use a gentle redirection approach, what she would say is, okay, I ate dessert on day 7, but on day 8, I can get back on track and I can not eat dessert again. This is also like flying a plane. I have several clients who are commercial airline pilots, and I was having a conversation with one day, and we were talking about the idea that you can draw a straight line from one airport to the next airport, the flight path. And particularly if you're flying manually, the plane can be off of that path as much as 90% of the time. And yet it still lands exactly where the pilot wants it to be. How does that happen? Well, throughout the course of the flight, the pilot is making thousands of course corrections. He's flying along and there's turbulence which blows the plane off track and he gently course corrects. Or there's other air traffic, again, gently course corrects. And again, it's important that the corrections are gentle. The pilot doesn't freak out. He just gently moves the plane back to where he wants it to be. So the lesson in this exercise is that the obstacle to progress is not getting off track. The obstacle to progress is the failure to get back on track. And so I'm going to encourage you to use gentle redirection because it strengthens the mind, heals the brain, and ends up being a really good metaphor for life. I'm going to encourage you to use that as a daily practice.